It's a wild world out there, but some worlds are even wilder. Hi, I'm Tyler Habney, and you're listening to Dungeons and Dystopias. Thank you for listening. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Dungeons and Dystopias. I am Tyler Habney, your host. I have run a combined total of over 200 games of both Cyberpunk Red and Dungeons and Dragons combined, and I am here to talk to you a little bit about my thoughts on certain things pertaining to those games. Last week, we talked a little bit, just a little bit about the Underdark. Interesting setting. Very, very crazy place. Today, though, I'd like to talk a bit more about an actual campaign. Not a homebrew one, but an actual campaign that takes place not in the Forgotten Realms, but adjacent. Today, I want to talk about Descent into Avernus, or Avernus. And for those who aren't well-versed in the different types of adventures there are for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, Descent into Avernus is a campaign, essentially, about going to hell. Avernus is the first layer of the 9 hells. In D&D lore, there are 9 layers to the hells, and which is different from the abyss. The hells are the domain of devils, who are lawful evil, and then the abyss is the domain of demons, who are chaotic evil. And so there's the sort of backstory behind Avernus and the abyss is that Avernus is the battleground for this large war that's been going on forever, the Blood War. And this war is between devils and demons, between the philosophy of law and chaos, but from the evil perspective. So obviously they're all fighting each other. And the Blood War is a huge part of D&D lore. If you interact at all with the extraplanar kind of settings, like Sigil or and I know Sigil is spelled sigil. In fact, it should be pronounced sigil, but no, it's Sigil, hard G. But if you pay attention to those types of settings, you'll hear the Blood War mentioned a lot because it is this sort of huge philosophical conflict that's happening elsewhere in the D&D universe. So the Blood War is a super huge, important part of Descent into Avernus. But another huge part of Descent into Avernus is, I guess kind of its connection to the D&D story at large, because believe it or not, Descent into Avernus works perfectly as a prequel. Well, not perfectly, but it works as a prequel to Baldur's Gate 3, another thing I've talked about on this show. And I think that's personally really fascinating stuff, because, you start the campaign in Baldur's Gate, and already you can see that there are some beginnings of the Absolutes plot in Baldur's Gate. And you can see that the Dead Three, Baal, Merkel, and Bane are ever present in Baldur's Gate, which is something that you have to deal with in Baldur's Gate 3. So already there is a connection to another part of D&D history that I guess is a bit more, I don't want to know, I guess I would say significant. But yeah, Descent into Avernus, I've run, I don't want to say the whole campaign because admittedly it did fall apart shortly after or before we left El Terrell. So I never got the ability to actually run the Avernus itself, but I did plenty of preparation, did plenty of research. I designed everything. We had the whole campaign ready, it's just we never got to it. But I just want to kind of go over some of my thoughts on Descent. This might be a bit of a shorter episode, just considering I never finished the campaign. But yeah, let's get right into it. So Descent into Avernus came out, I'd say, probably about a year or so before the Baldur's Gate 3 special access, early access dropped, or I could be wrong about that. But yeah, it didn't exactly necessarily come out straight up as a prequel or a setup to Baldur's Gate 3. I think it mentions Baldur's Gate 3 at some point, but you wouldn't really be able to tell that they're connected until you actually played Baldur's Gate 3, which is really good, which is really exciting. So basically, the campaign is supposed to start just after the city of El Terrell has essentially vanished. It's a crater in the ground now. It just, one day, this huge thing in the center of town, this huge like ball of light, basically a second sun called the Companion, suddenly turned dark, and there was like lightning, and people started, buildings started collapsing and all that, and then suddenly, poof, gone. Nobody knows exactly what happened to El Terrell, but a lot of people are obviously they're refugees now from El Terrell. They're making their way to Baldur's Gate. And they're being turned away at the door, essentially. There's a lot going on politically within Baldur's Gate and within El Terrell, but essentially what is necessary to know is that the plots of what happened to El Terrell and what is currently happening in Baldur's Gate are connected. So that's kind of a huge sort of starting point where you, through activities in Baldur's Gate, where you're going after this noblewoman who's trying to basically claim control of the whole council of Baldur's Gate, and you find out through kind of investigating her that she is connected to the cult of Zariel, and the cult of Zariel is connected to the cult of the Dead 3. So they're all sort of connected. They're working together to try and essentially throw Baldur's Gate into this sort of chaotic political minefield. And the players get involved in that. It's like, I think there's 2 or 3 dungeons in Baldur's Gate alone. And it eventually turns out, or as you learn, there's this guy named Thavius Krieg, who used to be this like high confessor or high priest in El Terrell. And basically, the deal with Thavius Krieg was a long time ago. When El Terrell was under the attack of a vampire lord, he was so brilliant and so genius that he made a deal with Zariel. Zariel being an ex-angel who was transformed into the Lord of Avernus after she descended, because she was so obsessed with the Blood War and trying to stop it that she turned evil. So the Zariel has a particular hatred for El Terrell. El Terrell, she sees El Terrell as a lot of betrayers, because the Hell Riders of El Terrell, during that, or one of those attacks, they went into Avernus to go fight demons with Zariel, and then they just kind of dipped. They ran, and Zariel. That's when she got captured and basically converted into the devil she is now. Yeah. So she has a lot of hatred for El Terrell, and she wants revenge against El Terrell. So she takes this deal with Thavius, and she's like, "Hey, I will save you from the vampires by putting a giant second sun over El Terrell, but in like." I don't know, I forget what it was, like 50, 60 years time or something. I will take your city. And that's what that was. That's the Companion essentially transported the city, or transports the city of El Terrell into Avernus. And the city's, it's floating above Avernus, being dragged by chains down towards the River Styx. Where if it reaches that point, the city will be flooded, and anyone who touches or drinks the River Styx water will lose their memories, and a whole bunch of bad stuff will happen. So generally, that's not something you want to happen. So basically, the adventure will eventually take people out of Baldur's Gate and actually towards El Terrell and in Avernus. But before we get into that stuff, I would like to say there is a common criticism with Descent Into Avernus, that the Baldur's Gate section is kind of it's kind of useless. You can find out a lot of that stuff or a lot of the lore you find out in Baldur's Gate in Avernus itself, and it'd probably be more interesting. In fact, a lot of things they see people do, or people do a lot of times, is they will start the campaign in Elturel as it is being, descending. So the players instantly have this connection to, oh, we need to save our city. And I think that really works. I think I probably should have done something like that, but I wanted to run the Baldur's Gate section because, Baldur's Gate 3 had just come out, and I wanted to tie it to the game. And I think my players understood that, and I think they had a great time with the Baldur's Gate section, because I ran it with some modifications, so it kind of all rolled off a little easier. But yeah, if you're planning on running Descent into Avernus, personally, unless you're really committed to exploring the city of Baldur's Gate, I would just start in Elturel in Avernus. I would then take the Baldur's Gate section that they give you in the book for Descent to Avernus and just make a Baldur's Gate campaign. Just make a campaign that takes place in Baldur's Gate, the city, and your players would probably be a lot more thankful for it. So yeah, general opening section of Descent to Avernus, not the best, but the rest of the campaign, perfect. Well, I don't know about perfect, but really good. So they get into Elturel. And basically, the gist of the objective when you get there is, get your bearings, figure out what's going on, get off of Elturel, get down into Avernus. I added a bit more into Elturel. I added a few dungeons and a few side quests and stuff, just so my players could have stuff to do around Elturel. And we did most of that. We did pretty much all of it, and then. Yeah, the campaign kind of fell apart just before they left Elturel to go into Avernus. So, talking about Elturel a bit, the base game, the stuff they give you, not a lot. You could be done with Elturel in like 1 or 2 sessions, which is fine, because obviously a lot of people want to get down to Avernus. I asked my players if they wanted to spend more time in Elturel, and I got a yes. So, but yeah. The rest of the campaign is very interesting. Once you get out of Elturel, you go to a place it's basically like a junkyard. You help some people out there. You get sort of the gist of your objectives for the campaign, which is you have this floating elephant creature named Lulu with you, and Lulu is like I don't want to call her an angel, but she works for the heavens. She's a planar being, and she used to be Zariel's war steed, because she can transform into this big old elephant thing. And during the fall of Zariel, she got separated, and kind of roamed off on her own. And eventually, they kind of managed to capture her, and they took her memories. So now Lulu can't remember anything. And she wound up on the material plane and eventually kind of in the hands of the party. Because, through a bunch of different means, there's a lot of different ways you can introduce Lulu. The way the book does it, she's just kind of there. She just kind of shows up, which is like, I don't know, feels a little lazy. But yeah, so basically, after you kind of get the idea that, hey, there's this sword, the Sword of Zariel, that Lulu believes can save Zariel, can redeem her, and it's hidden somewhere in Avernus. And since Lulu can't remember, you gotta kind of try to help sort of get her memories back. And that's kind of the crux of the campaign. There are 2 different paths you can take through the campaign, the path of devils and the path of demons. Which obviously plays back into that whole Blood War aesthetic. And man, you meet a lot of really crazy people in Avernus. There's for one, Mordenkainen, the multiverse traveling wizard from Greyhawk or whatever is here. If you're versed in D&D books at all, you would know Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, Mordenkainen's Monsters in the Multiverse. He's kind of a big deal. They also have, oh gosh, I can't remember the name. the one guy from Critical Role, uh, Dragonborn Paladin, serves Vecna. He's there, and he has the Hand of Vecna, like just straight up from Critical Role. So that campaign from Critical Role campaign 2, I believe, was canonized by Descent into Avernus. It's pretty crazy, honestly. I find that to be a I don't know, kind of a big step for the people at Critical Role. I think that's really cool. But basically, Paths of Demons and Devils, 2 different ways to kind of reach the end of the campaign, which is, of course, the Sword of Zariel being kept inside of a giant scab that is formed out of the wasteland of Avernus. Which, by the way, Avernus is a lava-filled, like, Mad Max desert hellhole. If you're wondering what this place looks like, I just go look at pictures. There's plenty on Baldur's Gate 3 starts in Avernus, so you can kind of get an idea on that. It all ends with you getting the Sword of Zariel. Hopefully, one of your party members has managed to maintain their goodness in hell and is able to wield that sword. And then you go and confront Zariel, and there's a bunch of ways it can end. The player can sacrifice their soul to save Elturel. You can defeat Zariel. Good luck with that. You can try to convince her with the sword. You can redeem her. There's a bunch of different ways it can go. Based off of Baldur's Gate 3, though, if we were to guess a canon ending, it would probably be that either someone gave their soul to save Elturel, or they managed to like convince Zariel to let Elturel go, or they freed the thing in the companion and it pulled it back up, or Tiamat helped out. There's a bunch of different ways you can get Elturel out of Avernus, but literally any ending that doesn't have Zariel redeemed, I'd say, is probably the canon ending of Avernus. Just based off of what we see in Baldur's Gate 3. So that'll be it for this little, let me, real quick, I'll just say, I'd give Descent into Avernus a solid 8 out of 10. Pretty good campaign. A lot of fun to design. A lot of fun lore. The Blood War is awesome. I would recommend running it. If you're looking for a campaign. I don't know if I do your first campaign being Descent into Avernus, but for a second or third, I think it'd be a really good option. So as for now, we're going to move on to our weekly element here. We're going to talk a bit about devils, and specifically the Chain Devil. Since we're talking about Avernus, I figured we'd bring these guys up. The Chain Devils are devils who they wear chains, and they utilize chains as a weapon. They can grab you with their chains, do a lot of damage with their chains, and generally they look pretty crazy. If you have the opportunity, I'd Google a Chain Devil and just take a big old gander at what these things look like, because their only clothes is chains. That is it. It's just chains, 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 and all of the chains have these cool little hooks on them. These guys, also known as Chirons, or Chitons, sorry, they are the tormentors of Avernus. Their whole job is torture and torment and inflicting pain. They love inflicting pain. They get great pleasure from hearing people scream. Generally, they savor the terror of their prey, as is the quote here. They are, generally a pretty decent enemy. They're CR 8, so typically a challenge for 4 adventures of a level 8, as the game suggests. Though from my personal experience, you could probably throw them at a party that's like level 6, and you'll probably be fine. They're just chain devils. They're kind of like Pinhead or the Cenobites from Hellraiser, but just a normal enemy that you can encounter walking around Avernus. And I think that's pretty spooky. So that's Chain Devils. Personally, I've used them a few times. Obviously, they're all over Avernus. There's one place in Avernus where it's just a bunch of giant chains laying on the ground, and as one might imagine, you can find find a chain devil there. So yeah, chain devils, pretty great. That'll be it for us this week. Thank you so much for coming. Next week we'll have something cyberpunk related for you. As for now, my name has been Tyler Hapney, and thank you so much for listening to Dungeons and Dystopias.